August 1945. In the humid jungles of French Indochina, a Japanese column slowly advances, bringing supplies to one of their forward outposts. All is quiet, except for the calls of native birds and insects. When suddenly, a cavalcade of rifle fire erupts from the thick underbrush, followed by mortar rounds exploding in the midst of the column. The Japanese never see their attackers, and the column is left in smoking ruin.
One of the many reasons I am fascinated by wargaming World War II is the sheer scope of the conflict. More nations, peoples, and factions were involved in the Second World War than in any other in humanity's history, and the conflict spanned a massive percentage of the globe. So when it came time to build my 7th Army for bolt action, I knew that I wanted to create a very unique force to highlight one of the many smaller and mostly unknown participants in the war. I fatefully stumbled upon an article recounting the actions of OSS Deer Team, a 7-man unit that was parachuted into French Indochina in July 1945 to meet up with Ho Chi Minh's Viet Minh, a Vietnamese nationalist group who was conducting partisan warfare on the occupying Japanese. Deer Team was to train and equip the Viet Minh, teaching them guerrilla tactics and show them how to use American small arms and support weapons, as well as gather intelligence on the Japanese. The Americans and Viet Minh fought together in at least one battle, capturing the Japanese garrison at Tan Trao. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And the Viet Minh went on to become infamous during the French Indochina War. This was the perfect backdrop for me to create a bolt-action army that not only had unique miniatures, but was an aspect of the Second World War that I had not ever seen portrayed on the tabletop. So after doing some research and scouting out miniatures, I set to work. Note that while I was chasing after historical accuracy, there were some aspects of this project that required some bending of the facts, especially for gameplay and army building reasons. I'll explain those issues when we get to them. The most difficult aspect of this project was going to be sourcing the miniatures. There are no manufacturers of 28mm Viet Minh who are out of the box suitable for 1945. But there are plenty of Vietnam and French Indochina War manufacturers out there that would be a good jumping off point. I decided to start my project with OSS Deer Team. This team was made up of 7 American agents and would form a unique display of officers for my army. The most suitable miniatures I could find to represent this team was the Merrill's Marauders set from Warlord Games. Now I know that OSS agents weren't Marines, and using this set was a bit of a stretch, but the models featured rolled up or cut off sleeves and the correct weapons to portray a special forces feel. So these guys were perfect. My platoon is led by Lieutenant Rene Dafarneau, who was actually second in command of the team. Major Allison Thomas led the entire group, but he was known to go against his orders and call in airstrikes for Ho Chi Minh. He actually had a really great relationship with Ho Chi Minh, so I decided to use him as an air observer, along with First Sergeant William Zielski, a radio operator. Zielski was the only OSS agent to receive any conversion work. I decided to remove his machete and build a radio for him out of plastic card and green stuff. Then the remaining 4 agents would either be NCOs for guerrilla squads or folded into weapons teams. Sourcing miniatures to represent the Viet Minh was going to be tough, and I knew there was going to be plenty of converting required. I decided first to grab the Filipino Guerrilla Kit from Company B. This set was a fantastic starting point, as the miniatures had a ragged, informal look that was perfect for representing civilian fighters, and they were all carrying American weapons. I did have one mini heart attack though, because when I saw the set online, it looked like some of the minis were carrying M1 carbines, and I thought, that's perfect. When I got the models, however, I was thinking, these are the worst sculpted M1 carbines I have ever seen. And then suddenly it clicked that they were actually M50 Racing submachine guns. So then I panicked again and hopped online and did some research because I wasn't sure if I could use them, but a quick Google search revealed that around 4,000 were ordered for French Indochina. It's unknown if all of them were delivered, but some of them were, so there was a good chance they had them. Overall, the Company B kit itself is a little bit below average when it comes to detail and sculpting quality, but after some head swaps from Warlord and Empress, the 12-figure set came together really nicely. They really have the ragged guerrilla look that I was going for. The next batch of soldiers was sourced from the assault group's Viet Cong line. Now, these are meant for the Vietnam War, but they were also a great base for bulking out my squads and team weapons. One blister came with captured American weapons, 2 of them were carbines, and 2 of them were M16s, but after I swapped the M16s out for World War II weapons, they were ready to go. Another blister featured 4 guerrillas with French rifles, and as the Viet Minh used practically any weapon they could get their hands on, these were perfect for my force. The assault group also makes Viet Cong bazooka, medium mortar, and MMG teams, which I grabbed and sculpted some rice paddy hats for. The OSS parachuted these weapons into French Indochina, and the Viet Minh were trained by Deer Team on how to use them, which meant I could have these important weapon teams in my platoon. Almost half of the miniatures in this army had conversion work done on them. Some were simple head swaps, some featured headgear sculpted from green stuff, but some conversions were a little more intense, where I changed out the weaponry with American or captured Japanese options, and some required all of these changes. Now, this may be the part of my army with the least amount of historical precedence, but is definitely one of my favorite pieces: a captured Chiha tank. I found this old Warlord resin Chiha at my local gaming store, and I knew I had to have it. But I already had 3 Chihas for my Japanese army, so I decided that this one would be a captured variant for my Viet Minh. If anything, it helps to pad out points, especially since infantry are so hard to come by for this force. So I added an aerial identification flag that I made out of green stuff, and I left one of the hatches to the transmission open, and I like to add a little bit of smoke to it when it's on the table, and it really gives it that unreliable effect. So, after the individual units were assembled, here is the army as a whole. I think the multiple manufacturers blend very well, and the army looks pretty coherent. It features miniatures from Warlord Games, Empress, the Assault Group, Company B, and Gringo 40s. As far as bolt action goes, the Partisans platoon is perfect for running a Viet Minh force. The special rules give the army a nice guerrilla flavor with some booby trap and special setup shenanigans. The selector also allows me to take all the team weapons that make a bolt-action army versatile, and the best part is that Deer Team equipped and trained the Viet Minh to use these weapons, so the army stays historically accurate. Currently, my force adds up to about 800 points, with 3 infantry squads, a first lieutenant, air observer with radio man, bazooka team, MMG team, medium mortar, and captured Chiha tank. 800 points is a standard game size for my local club, but I'm looking forward to adding more to the army. Empress just recently released a couple Vietnamese civilians with weapons that will be absolutely perfect for my Viet Minh, but I just have to wait until they're available here in the US. I'm also hoping to convert a sniper team and some crew for a light artillery piece, probably using a captured Japanese gun. So while the Japanese are the obvious historical enemy for my Viet Minh to fight, they are not the only proper opponent. Just after World War II ended, the Viet Minh tangled with French colonial forces, vying for control of Vietnam. In a crazy moment of history, the British also sent a small amount of troops, most of whom were veterans of jungle warfare. These troops were meant to disarm and repatriate the Japanese soldiers who were still in French Indochina after World War II. This British force was pulled into combat against the Viet Minh, and they actually enlisted the aid of some of the Japanese troops in the area to help crush Ho Chi Minh's guerrillas. This has some super cool and very unique implications for bolt action games. We could have 1945 Viet Minh versus British and Japanese in a group of scenarios that would totally be historically plausible. So in conclusion, I'm very proud of this army, and I am so looking forward to the COVID-19 era to come to a close so I can get them on the table. It has been a great challenge researching the history, sourcing and converting the miniatures, and creating a very unique army not yet seen in bolt action. Remember, World War II was a massive conflict, and if you're looking to recreate one of its lesser-known combatants, a little imagination and creativity, and maybe some green stuff, goes a long way. But you can do it. So this begs the question, which force should I build for my 8th Bolt Action Army.